And FBI Director Kash Patel is about to face some tough questions when he testifies this week on Capitol Hill after some mistakes in his handling of Charlie Kirk's assassination investigation. Conservative activist Chris Rufo posted this. It's time for Republicans to assess whether Patel is the right man to run the FBI, adding that he performed terribly in the last few days. So Patel prematurely announced the suspect was in custody. He also appeared to take credit for the FBI's release of images that ultimately led to the suspect's arrest. Here's how Utah Governor Spencer Cox sees it.
This was a co-lead operation. So the FBI was co-lead with the state. We worked very closely together. I think Director Patel would tell you it was flawless. It was everybody just trying to decide, is this a good idea? The reasons to release it, I think, are pretty obvious, right? It makes it easier for lots of people to see it and maybe find someone.
Group chat is back. I wanted to bring this up because these questions were sort of coming from inside the house, so to speak. And we were pointing out Rufo's tweet in particular because it was not just some flyby post of like, this guy is bad. It was a long explanation of why he thinks people should assess this. What do you think is happening with Patel? We were talking about the fact that he wasn't on the Sunday show.
Okay, so let me get this straight here. The director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the top cop in America, the guy who is supposed to be protecting us from terrorists and criminals and foreign spies, this guy allegedly threw a tantrum on an FBI jet because he did not have the right jacket. Yeah, you heard that right. And I am not making this up. We are not talking about some rookie agent having a bad day at the office here. We are talking about Kash Patel himself, the man President Trump handpicked to run the FBI. And according to a leaked internal report, this is the kind of stuff happening at the highest levels of American law enforcement right now. Come on, this is absolutely wild, and I need you to understand just how crazy this situation has gotten, because we are going to break down every single detail of what is happening inside the Bureau right now, and trust me when I say the details are going to blow your mind. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
Of the investigation, but also the point person talking about this. But the Kash Patel criticism has been going on well before the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Largely because of Epstein and other there's a lawsuit against the FBI for the termination of some key employees. That's part of it. But the rank and file has been growing increasingly dismayed by
there's a lawsuit by these former employees.
But I think the Epstein thing is probably much more.
So here is what happened. And I need you to really pay attention to this because the details matter. A confidential assessment based on interviews with 24 FBI sources. Let me say that again. So it really sinks in. 24 separate sources inside the FBI got leaked to the press last week. And what is inside this thing is absolutely jaw-dropping when you actually read through it. We are talking about an organization that multiple sources describe as a rudderless ship that is internally paralyzed by fear. The FBI, the most powerful law enforcement agency in the entire country, paralyzed by fear. And not fear of terrorists trying to attack us on American soil. Not fear of drug cartels flooding our streets with fentanyl and killing tens of thousands of Americans every single year. No. They are afraid of their own boss. They are afraid of Kash Patel himself and what might happen if they say the wrong thing or dare to question any decision he makes. Can you imagine going to work every day, terrified of your own leadership? And look, I know what some of you are thinking right now. As you are watching this, you are thinking, oh, here we go. Another hit piece on a Trump appointee from the mainstream media trying to take down anyone associated with this administration. But hold on. Just hold on a second here and let me explain why this one is different from the usual political attacks we see every single day in the news cycle. This is not coming from CNN or MSNBC running anonymous sources through their editorial machine and spinning everything to fit their narrative. This is a leaked internal FBI assessment. These are FBI agents and career professionals who have dedicated their entire adult lives to law enforcement, speaking out about what is happening inside their own agency. 24 of them came forward with their concerns and were willing to go on record about what they are seeing. And the picture they are painting is deeply troubling when you consider what is at stake here for all of us. Let me give you just one example to set the stage here before we dive into everything else. September 11th. Yes, that's September 11th, the anniversary of the worst terrorist attack on American soil in our nation's history. Kash Patel was on an FBI jet heading to some kind of operation, and according to this report, he refused to get off the plane when they landed at their destination. Why would the FBI director refuse to exit an aircraft during an active operation on the most solemn day in American law enforcement? Are you ready for this? Because he did not have a raid jacket that looked right? Are you kidding me with this stuff? I mean, seriously, are you absolutely kidding me right now? Agents had to scramble around trying to find him proper attire while an operation was supposed to be happening and people were waiting for their director to show up. They are on a mission on September 11th of all days, and the director of the FBI is worried about his outfit and how he is going to look. And according to this same report, he allegedly demanded that SWAT patches be removed from uniforms during an active operation because of how things looked visually. And that jacket incident is just the appetizer for what we are about to get into, because there is so much more to this story. Because there is this thing that happened at Quantico, the FBI training facility, where agents learned their craft and prepared to serve this country. Some personnel there apparently discussed whether Patel should be issued a firearm, as FBI directors typically carry weapons as part of their position. Now, I do not know all the details of that conversation or exactly what was said in that room. Maybe they had legitimate concerns about his training level since he came from a legal background rather than law enforcement. Maybe they had concerns about his temperament based on what they had observed since he took over. But here is what matters, and this is the part that should concern every single American watching this video right now. When Patel found out that people were talking about him, that career FBI professionals were having a conversation about their new boss, he ordered polygraph tests on the staff at Quantico. Lie detector tests on FBI personnel who had done nothing wrong except have a conversation. One respected leader inside the FBI called this unnecessarily punitive, and yeah, that seems about right to me. And now, on top of all this internal chaos, Patel is facing a lawsuit from 3 dismissed FBI leaders who are taking him to court. They are alleging in federal court that they were unlawfully targeted, not because they did anything wrong or failed at their jobs, but to please President Trump and demonstrate loyalty. So we have got a leaked report showing an agency in chaos from top to bottom. We have got career agents saying they are afraid of their own director and what he might do to them. We have got allegations of tantrums and ego-driven decision-making at the highest levels. We have got a lawsuit claiming political retaliation against senior officials. This matters. This really, really matters. And I cannot stress this enough, because whether you love Trump or hate him, we should all be able to agree on one fundamental thing. The people running our most important law enforcement agency need to be competent and stable and focus on protecting Americans, not on getting the right jacket for a photo opportunity. So let us dig into this thing properly and really understand what is going on here. All right. So now that I have got your attention, let me walk you through what is really going on here in detail, because this story deserves a thorough examination. Because this story is way more complicated than most people realize, and there is a lot of important context getting lost in all the headlines and the partisan spin from both sides of the political aisle right now. We need to look at this carefully and understand the full picture of what is happening at the FBI, because the implications are enormous for every single American who depends on this agency to keep them safe from threats, both foreign and domestic. First, let us talk about who Kash Patel actually is, because I think a lot of people do not really understand his background and where he came from. Not the sanitized version from his supporters who think he can do no wrong, not the cartoon villain version from his critics who blame him for everything, the actual guy in his actual history. Kash Patel came up as a lawyer and worked for the Justice Department for several years before entering the political arena. He was a staffer on the House Intelligence Committee during Trump's first term, and that is where things really started to take shape for his career trajectory. During that first term, Patel became one of the president's most loyal allies, and I do mean loyal in the most extreme sense of that word. He was there during all the Russia investigation stuff, defending Trump at every turn. He was there during both impeachment proceedings, standing by Trump's side. He was one of those guys who would go on television at any hour and defend Trump no matter what. And Trump noticed that loyalty, because Trump always notices loyalty. He values it above almost everything else, including competence. So when the second term started, Patel got the big prize that he had been waiting for, FBI director, one of the most powerful positions in the entire federal government, with authority over thousands of agents and billions of dollars in resources. And look, Trump had every right to put his guy in there, because that is how our system works. Presidents get to choose their FBI directors within the bounds of Senate confirmation in the constitutional process. That is how it works. And I am not going to pretend otherwise or act like Trump did something wrong by nominating someone he trusts. But here's where things get interesting and where we need to pay close attention. There is a difference between putting your loyalists in charge of an agency and having that agency actually function properly once they get there. And according to this leaked report from 24 internal sources, the FBI, under Kash Patel, is not functioning properly at all. In fact, it seems to be falling apart from the inside, according to the people who actually work there every single day. Let me share some of the language from this assessment because I want you to hear exactly what FBI sources are saying about their own agency under current leadership. They describe the agency as internally paralyzed by fear. Those are their words, not mine, and they chose that language deliberately. They call it a rudderless ship with no clear direction under the current leadership and nobody at the helm steering toward any coherent mission. They talk about a culture where people are afraid to speak up about problems, afraid to do their jobs the way they were trained, afraid of retaliation if they say the wrong thing or raise the wrong concern. Now, I want to be fair here because fairness matters, and I am not trying to do a hit piece on anyone. These are anonymous sources speaking through a leaked document that we cannot independently verify in every single detail. We do not know exactly who these 24 people are, or what positions they hold within the Bureau, or what their personal motivations might be for speaking out. Maybe some of them have personal access to grind against Patel or the administration and are looking to settle scores. Maybe some are part of the old guard who just do not like change and resent any new leadership, regardless of who it is. But 24 people, all telling the same story, with the same themes and the same concerns, that is a pattern you cannot dismiss as just a few disgruntled employees venting to a reporter because they are unhappy with their new boss. That is a systemic problem that runs deep through the organization and indicates something seriously wrong with how the place is being run right now. When you have that many career professionals, people who have served under directors appointed by both Republican and Democratic presidents, all saying the same thing about the current state of the agency, you have to take it seriously regardless of your political affiliation. Let us go back to that September 11th incident because I think it really captures something important about Patel's leadership style and priorities. Think about what that day means to the FBI and to everyone in law enforcement across this entire country. It is the day everything changed for American national security and the way we think about threats to our homeland. Every year, that anniversary is a moment for reflection and recommitment to protecting the American people from those who want to do us harm. And according to this report, Kash Patel turned September 11th into a fashion show focused on his personal appearance. He would not get off the plane without the right raid jacket because he was not satisfied with what was available. He demanded SWAT patches be removed from uniforms during an active operation because he did not like the visual appearance. What kind of leadership is that? What message does that send to the people working under you when you prioritize your outfit over the mission on the anniversary of the worst terrorist attack in American history? And then there's the Quantico situation, which honestly bothers me even more because of what it reveals about how Patel handles any form of questioning or criticism. So some personnel at the FBI Training Academy were having a discussion about whether Patel should be issued a firearm, which is a completely normal procedural discussion that happens with any new director. FBI directors typically carry firearms as part of their role. There are protocols and training requirements and discussions that happen whenever someone new takes over the position. Some people at Quantico apparently had questions or concerns about this particular situation, maybe about his training level since he came from a legal and political background rather than law enforcement, maybe about his temperament based on what they had observed. The specific content of their concerns is not really the point here. The point is that they were doing their jobs as professionals, having a procedural conversation about a policy matter. And when Patel found out this conversation had taken place, his response was to order polygraph tests to find out who said what about him. One FBI leader called this approach unnecessarily punitive, and that is putting it mildly, if you ask me. This is the behavior of someone more concerned with personal loyalty than with running an effective organization that serves the American people. This is the behavior of someone who sees any criticism as a personal betrayal that must be punished and rooted out at all costs. And you know what happens in a culture of fear? Because we have seen this play out in other organizations throughout history. People stop talking openly about problems they observe because they are afraid of what might happen to them. People stop raising concerns through proper channels because they have seen what happens to people who speak up. They just keep their heads down and try not to get noticed and hope they can survive until new leadership comes in. That is not how you run a world-class law enforcement agency that is responsible for protecting 300 million Americans. That is how you run one straight into the ground while everyone watches. Now here is where things get even more complicated because we are not just dealing with internal complaints anymore. Patel is facing actual legal action in federal court from people who used to work for him. 3 dismissed FBI leaders have filed a lawsuit against him personally, and they are not messing around with this thing. Their allegation is pretty straightforward when you break it down. They say they were unlawfully targeted for termination, not because they did anything wrong or failed at their jobs, but because firing them would please President Trump and demonstrate Patel's loyalty to the man who appointed him. I want to be clear about something here. This lawsuit is just an allegation at this point and has not been proven in court. These former officials have to prove their case with evidence and testimony and documentation. Patel will have every opportunity to defend himself and present his side of the story. But the timing of this lawsuit, combined with the leaked report, combined with all the other stories, it paints a picture that is hard to ignore. You have got current employees saying the agency is paralyzed by fear and cannot function properly under current leadership. You have got former leaders saying they were fired for political reasons rather than job performance. You have got reports of tantrums and punitive actions against staff who dared to question the director. This is all happening at once, and it is creating a perfect storm of dysfunction at one of the most important agencies in the federal government. And here's what most people miss about this story because they get caught up in the partisan angles and lose sight of the bigger picture. This is not just about Kash Patel as an individual and whether he is a good guy or a bad guy. This is about what happens to critical institutions when political loyalty becomes more important than institutional competence and professional standards. The FBI has real problems that existed before Patel ever walked through those doors. There are legitimate criticisms of how the agency has operated over the years under both Republican and Democratic administrations, but the answer to those problems is not installing a director who creates a culture of fear where nobody can speak up. That does not fix the FBI's real problems. That breaks the institution further and makes everything worse. All right, so let us break this down into the key points because there is a lot of information here, and I want to make sure you walk away understanding what really matters in this story and why you should care about it regardless of your political views. Point number 1, the FBI under Kash Patel is experiencing serious internal problems that go beyond normal bureaucratic friction and the usual complaints you hear from any large organization going through leadership changes. This is based on a leaked internal assessment from 24 separate FBI sources, career professionals who have spent years serving under directors appointed by both parties and have seen how the agency is supposed to function when things are working properly. They are describing an agency paralyzed by fear and functioning like a rudderless ship with no clear direction or purpose under current leadership. When that many people inside an organization say the same thing with the same concerns, you have to take it seriously, regardless of your political affiliation or how you feel about the Trump administration, because these are the people on the front lines telling us something is seriously wrong. Point number 2, the specific allegations suggest a leadership style focused on personal ego rather than institutional effectiveness and actually getting the mission done for the American people. The September 11th incident with the raid jacket is about ego, pure and simple, and there is no other way to spin it or explain it away. There is no other way to interpret refusing to exit an aircraft during an operation because you do not like your outfit and want to look a certain way. The polygraph tests at Quantico, because people were having a conversation about him, is ego combined with vindictiveness and a desire to punish anyone who questions him. Effective leaders do not behave this way, and anyone who has studied leadership knows this instinctively from years of experience. Effective leaders focus on the mission and create environments where their people can do their best work without fear of retaliation. They welcome constructive criticism because they know it makes the organization better. What we are seeing from Patel is insecurity masquerading as strength, weakness dressed up as toughness, and everyone around him can see it. Point number 3, this situation has real consequences for American national security, and we cannot ignore that just because this story is politically convenient for one side or the other. In the endless partisan battles, the FBI is responsible for counterterrorism operations that protect us from people who want to kill Americans on our own soil. They handle counterintelligence work that protects our secrets from foreign adversaries like China and Russia, who are constantly trying to steal our technology and compromise our officials. They run major criminal investigations that take down drug cartels and human traffickers and organized crime networks that threaten communities across this country. When the people inside that agency are paralyzed by fear, when they are afraid to speak up about problems or raise concerns through proper channels, bad things happen that affect all of us. Mistakes get made because people are afraid to flag concerns. Threats get missed because information does not flow properly up the chain of command. We have seen this before with other agencies throughout history. When leadership becomes toxic and institutional culture falls apart, the mission suffers and real people get hurt. Point number 4, the lawsuit from dismissed FBI leaders adds another serious layer to this already complicated situation and creates potential legal exposure for everyone involved. 3 former officials are alleging they were unlawfully targeted for termination, not because they failed at their jobs or did anything wrong, but because firing them would demonstrate loyalty to President Trump and show that Patel was willing to do whatever it takes to please the boss. If they can prove their case in court with evidence and testimony, that is a huge problem with potential legal consequences that could reach the highest levels of government. Congressional investigations will follow as lawmakers demand answers. Oversight hearings will be held with cameras rolling and witnesses testifying under oath. This is not going away anytime soon, no matter how much anyone might want it to disappear from the headlines. So what does all this mean for regular Americans who are just trying to live their lives and keep their families safe and do not have time to follow every twist and turn of political drama in Washington? Here is why this matters more than most people realize. Trust in institutions matters for a functioning democracy, and we are running dangerously low on that trust right now. When people do not trust the FBI, when they think it has been captured by one political faction or the other and cannot be relied upon to act fairly, everything in law enforcement gets harder for everyone involved. Investigations get questioned before they even start because people assume bad faith and political motivation. Prosecutions get second-guessed by juries who wonder about political motivations behind the charges. The whole system becomes just another front in the endless political wars that are tearing this country apart. That is bad for everyone, left, right, and center, regardless of who you voted for or which party you support. And right now, what we are seeing with Kash Patel is not helping rebuild trust in the FBI. It is making the problem worse with every new revelation that comes out. The leaked report showing internal chaos and fear throughout the organization from top to bottom. The allegations of ego-driven decision-making that prioritizes appearances over substance and getting the job done. The lawsuit claiming political retaliation against career professionals who dedicated decades to public service. All of this feeds into the narrative that the FBI cannot be trusted to do its job fairly and without political interference. Maybe there are thousands of good people inside the FBI doing excellent work every day despite the leadership problems, and I am sure there are because I have met some of them over the years. But perception matters in a democracy, and right now the perception is that the FBI under Kash Patel is a mess that cannot get out of its own way. So where does this go from here? I honestly do not know because there are so many variables at play and so many ways this could unfold in the coming weeks and months. Maybe Patel survives all this and keeps running the FBI exactly the way he has been running it until now. Maybe the lawsuit gets dismissed on procedural grounds and the leaked report gets forgotten in a few news cycles as everyone moves on to the next controversy. Or maybe this is the beginning of the end for his tenure at the Bureau. Maybe the pressure builds as more information comes out and more sources come forward with their concerns about what is happening inside the agency. Maybe Congress gets involved and starts holding oversight hearings that put all of this under a spotlight where everyone can see it. Maybe Trump himself decides his loyal soldier has become more trouble than he is worth and finds a way to move on quietly. We will have to watch and see how this plays out over the coming weeks and months because this story is far from over. But here's what I want you to take away from this video because this is the important part that really matters. What is happening at the FBI right now matters. It matters for law enforcement effectiveness across this entire country. It matters for national security and our ability to protect ourselves from real threats. It matters for whether Americans can trust the institutions that are supposed to protect them from harm. 24 FBI sources are saying the agency is paralyzed by fear under its current leadership. That is not nothing. That is not normal workplace complaining from people who are unhappy with the new boss. That is a genuine crisis at a critical agency that we all depend on, whether we realize it or not. And how we respond to that crisis, how Trump responds, how Congress responds, how all of us respond as citizens who care about this country, that is going to tell us a lot about where this country is headed in the years to come. This story is not over, not by a long shot. I will see you in the next one.